Hello, everyone. Welcome again. As I mentioned earlier, I was waiting for my guest to come through. She has joined us. Our guest this afternoon is Dr. Memory Zisengwe Darikwa, who is a speaker, author, and counselor. If you have any questions that are relevant to what we'll be discussing this afternoon, you can type them in. And if you also have any comments that are relevant to what we're discussing, we'll also appreciate if you type them in the comment section. I'll attend to the questions. Welcome on our platform, Dr. Memory.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much, Tafadzwa, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'm sure our guests, our listeners would want to see your face if it's possible. They would want to hear who is speaking. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I hope you're having a great weekend. You're a grief counselor. What does well-being mean in the context of a person who is grieving? You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I would say it means different things to different people, but I would look at it from a holistic perspective because there are different aspects to a person. And the first thing that I would maybe mention would be, say, the physical aspect of or well-being of a person who's grieving, because our bodies respond to our feelings and our experiences, and our bodies do carry the burden of the pain or the emotional or psychological pain that we carry. So I would say it's very important in the physical aspect to honor the body that carries the burden. And this would involve things like even eating well, um, going out for even a 5-minute walk, because sometimes it becomes very difficult for us to do the things that we would normally do when we are not grieving. So I would say it's important to honor the body, the physical aspect of our life or of a grieving person, by taking care of it, by feeding it, by exercising it, no matter how little the amount of exercise or how little an effort that we can put into it. It's important to hydrate even our bodies and to nourish the body, like I said earlier on. So the next thing would be emotional well-being, because when one is grieving, um, there's a lot of confusion, resentment, anger, feelings of betrayal and guilt and sorrow and intense sadness that comes with, with loss, be it the loss of a loved one, the loss of, it could be a limb from your body from surgery, it could be a pet, it could be a relationship, a marriage, so all that will take a toll on our emotions. So the emotional well-being of a person who's grieving is very important, and it will need to be taken care of. And this means allowing ourselves to feel each emotion, to honor each emotion as it comes. If you are feeling angry, if you're feeling resentful, um, you know, allow it to play out without judgment, without asking yourself why or how you're feeling that way. So there'll be a concoction of emotions, and it's important to recognize each emotion and honor it, through storytelling, going out, seeking out for help in therapy, or just talking to family and friends. And there's also the psychological aspect, psychological well-being that also needs to be taken care of. And this is normally triggered by the fact that when we experience loss, when we are grieving, we lose our identity, or some people may lose their identity. You begin to ask yourself who you are. For example, if someone loses a spouse, then who am I now? And that identity crisis, or that identity transformation will need to be taken care of. And there's also the social well-being of a person who is grieving. And this means that, for example, if someone is in a church setting, for example, it means that they'll have to stop attending the couples meetings or couples retreats, for example. And sometimes that becomes very difficult. I remember one lady saying to me, so in my mother tongue, a widow is called shirikadzi. So she said, so, I don't want to be called that. And shirikadzi, I don't want to be called a widow. I don't want to identify as a widow, young as I am, and people calling me a widow. I don't want that. So all that social, psychological, emotional, and physical well-being needs to be taken care of, needs to be recognized and looked after. And there's also the spiritual aspect to those who are spiritual, because there will need to be, the sense of connection to a higher power would be very, very helpful. Excuse me. A sense of a connection to a higher power would be very, very helpful. I'm sorry, I'm having to move positions due to connectivity. Okay, so a sense of connectivity to a higher power would, I'm not sure if the lighting is okay.
Yes, we can see you, Dr. Memo.
Okay, that's fine. So that would help, because sometimes we feel helpless. And when you know that there's a higher power to those who are spiritual, when you know that there's a higher power that you can talk to, that can help you, that can rescue you from the distress that you're going through, that would feed into one's emotional well-being. And so in responding to what you've said, there are different aspects of well-being, different areas of well-being that need to be taken care of when one is grieving.
Oh, thank you very much. That's quite a comprehensive response. When someone doesn't want to be identified with the loss, you mentioned a widow who didn't want to be identified as a widow. How would you help such a person? Like, how would you help them? Yeah, because there are people who would know that they lost maybe their partner, and maybe they may mention them. Like, sometimes then these days people may have even meetings for widows, for single mothers. How would you help such a person? Because definitely if maybe there's a meeting for widows, she wouldn't be comfortable to go there because she doesn't want to be identified. Or, sometimes some people wear a particular dress code for a while because they are mourning, which means if someone doesn't want to be identified as a widow, they would probably not wear maybe black, or some people do different things. How would you advise such a person to help them? I'm sure what's affected here is probably their self-esteem as well. How would you advise them?
I think it all boils down to the person who is grieving, because at the end of the day, the grieving person is the one who is living their life. And as much as there are prescriptions out there as to how we should carry ourselves, or how people should carry ourselves, how people should grieve, when people should stop grieving, it takes a lot of strength even, and a consciousness to understand that it's you who is grieving. And sometimes the people who prescribe the dress or the way things should be done when one is grieving mean well. It doesn't mean that their well-meaning will be helpful to us or to the person who is grieving. So I would say that there's a phrase that people have been using, in our generation, that sometimes you need to choose you. You need to know what works for you. As much as it will be very difficult to make decisions and to have clarity of thought and to look out for yourself when you're grieving, um, but whenever you get a moment to yourself, it's important to know that it's you who fully understands the gravity, the depth of your loss, and you know what's working for you and what would work for you in order to go forward with life after your loss. I'm not sure if I've totally responded to what you
Um,
asked, because I missed some of the bits. My network is a bit unstable.
No, that's helpful. I'm sure to a person in the situation, they would understand. It was basically, if I understood you, you're basically saying, choose you. Look at your grief and uh, decide how to deal with it. As much as the expectations from the society, uh, you may need to manage expectations on your part rather than meet everyone's expectations. So I think you answered it very well. And grieving a loved one can lead to one being depressed, and which can also affect one's productivity. As a grief counselor, what does productivity mean to you? And how would you advise someone who is not productive because of what they're going through or the pain they're going through? How would you advise them to be more productive?
In such circumstances, I would say productivity would not be about, how much gets done, or how quickly one gets back to doing their day-to-day business, if they're running a business or if they are employed, or if they have certain responsibilities, be it in church. One could be a pastor, they experience a loss. And for some, I've heard that there are people like ministers who, after losing a child, the next Sunday they're on the pulpit because they're saying, I won't allow this to stop me from doing what I'm supposed to do, for example. And there are some who take, a back seat and just, deal with it their own way. So I would say productivity should not be seen in terms of how quickly one goes back to work, how quickly one goes back to their business, how much they get done, or their efficiency, or perfection. But I would say it's about, gracefully engaging in small tasks that will help that person to maintain purpose and connection. Because, when we achieve, we experience a certain feeling of joy and achievement. And when we are productive, that feeds into our sense of purpose. So expecting a person who's grieving to chair a board meeting or preach at a crusade or whatever big task that may be ahead of them may be a lot, but assigning them or allowing them to, you know, um, maintain purpose and self-care through doing small and meaningful tasks that you know that when they do it, they're going to finish it and they're going to feel good about it. And it's going to help them maintain, that sense of productivity and purpose. Because it's very important for us to honor the emotional and physical and psychological pain and distress that a person goes through when they experience loss. And it's also very important to honor the academic and the psychological and emotional and professional limitations that come from the fact that the person is grieving. And for them to move forward, they ought to understand that there are limitations that come with grief. Like we said earlier on, that when we're talking about emotional well-being, there's confusion involved. There's just a lot of heaviness in terms of emotion and mental fog that comes with the depression of that comes through grief. So expecting certain levels of production may not be helpful, but as long as that person is doing what they could not do from maybe the time that they experience the grief, then you'd see that as productivity. Because at some point, a person may not be able to get out of bed. They may not be able to wake up and bath the child. They may not be able to even finish a meal. So if they begin to, achieve those milestones, they're being productive, in their own way, in their context. So it's very important for us to be conscious of the fact that grief is very heavy and it affects every aspect of our lives. And as long as someone is doing a work to rebuild and reconstruct their lives, no matter how small, they are being productive.
Oh,
Because
that
there's got to be room to make room to accommodate the sadness and the heaviness that comes with it, as well as the healing that will slowly be happening or taking place.
Oh, thank you. That's very insightful, and I'm sure um, people who are also around those grieving will understand that they don't have to put pressure on them until such a time, because sometimes there's an expectation, especially maybe if it's at work. They have got targets, they want to meet their deadlines. So to understand that you need to do like small tasks as long as I'm making progress. Depends on the kind of job probably you are working for. I remember the other time I interviewed someone who was saying in the corporate, sometimes as a boss, you just need to ask someone how they are doing.
Right.
Sometimes in the corporate, there's this feeling of I don't want people to be familiar with me. So they kind of put a gap. And what that person was just saying was that people have issues, personal issues, and sometimes people are heavily burdened. So maybe just asking somebody how they're doing, it will also help even with the expectations of the organization on productivity. Because if you realize that maybe someone is heavily burdened, then maybe you refer them to the wellness department, where probably they can help them to deal with grief. I have heard people say you must not tell a grieving person that you're strong. Like, sometimes when you're trying to comfort somebody, you use some words which may not be received well, by the person, though you mean well. And I understand there's a grieving cycle where people go through towards their healing. Would you want maybe to just share the stages? And can someone remain in the denial stage, like for a long time? And also maybe you would want also to share what kind of words would you say if someone tells somebody is grieving? the person may perceive them as insensitive?
Okay, I'll start with the be strong, my sister, or you need to be strong, my brother. Be strong, dad. Be strong for the family. Be strong for your children. I remember someone asking me, and they said, when people say be strong, what do they mean? Because I've been going through this for a long time, and people keep saying, be strong, my sister, be strong. What does it mean to be strong? It's something that we laugh about to this day, but it's out there, and we use it all the time, and we mean well, and people mean well when they do say that. And Tafadzwa, the truth is sometimes we don't know what to do when we are around people who are grieving. We mean well, we love them, we want to support them, but sometimes we just don't know what to say. And people will say things meaning well that will end up just hurting the person they mean to comfort. So, what I would say is holding it delays healing. You know, if we hold the pain, it will delay the healing. And when we tell someone to be strong, most times it's maybe when someone is sobbing deeply and you're like, be strong, be strong. The communication that they get is that you are telling them not to cry, not to feel broken, not to feel or to express their pain, not to show their pain. And when that happens, it doesn't help the healing process, because when it's held up, when it's held in, it delays the healing process. So what's what I would suggest people to say is to say it's okay for you to feel how you're feeling, and obviously to encourage them not to feel or think about the West, like taking their lives as well. And it's okay to tell them that they don't have to hold it all together, because obviously when someone dies, they go with their functions and the roles that they had in the family, for example. So the remaining spouse or the children or whoever it is, the family members, it could be a cousin who was good at organizing events and things like that. And when they are not there, the family may not be able to hold it together. So it's okay to tell them that, you know what, you may not be able to hold it together. And it's okay because things are different now. It's okay to sit there and be silent and say nothing. It's okay to sit there and say, I'm here however you want me. How can I help you today? What can we do together? What can I do to make you feel better? You know, offer help. Can I bring you dinner today? Can I make the, sandwiches for the school kids, school lunch boxes today? Can I pick you up instead of you driving to church, instead of you driving to work? Maybe you work in the same area or wherever you need to go, whatever needs to be done. Just take care of some business and let them know that you are present and you are there. Sometimes just prompt and say, would you want me to do this? Because sometimes people say, oh, if you need anything, I'm a phone call away or I'm a text message away. But sometimes they just don't have the energy to do that, or they feel like they're burdening you. So be present and offer and prompt whatever you can help with. And then I think you shared something about being stuck in denial, right?
Yeah, yes, I asked that. I understand the stages
The
uh,
stages.
in healing. Like when someone is grieving, there are stages. Some starts with denial. Then I think there is a stage where you accept and
Okay, so the first stage, and these were put up by Kubler-Ross, and they said that the first stage would be denial. When a death happens or when the news of loss, comes to a person, I'll speak for myself. The first word that comes out of my mouth is no. I'll just say no, and I'll start screaming. And my crying means that I've heard it and I've believed it, but I will still say no. So it's the denial, it's the shock, it's the body's and the mind's protective function, so that because you are dealing with something that you've never dealt with, and your body, your system, and your mind cannot process it. So when you deny it, your system and your mind is protecting you from the intensity of the pain that's coming with the acknowledgement that this person or this thing that you loved so much is no longer there. And then and obviously the way to deal with it with time would just be to expose yourself to the loss, looking at the photos, playing the music that they used to play, eating the food that you used to eat with them, the types of food that you used to eat with them. And then the second stage is anger. Anger may be directed at yourself. Anger may be directed at maybe the doctor or the physician or the nurses, the hospital, whom you think did not manage the sickness or the patient or the whatever was going on with your loved one. It could be anger even towards God. But what's important is to know that this anger sometimes may not be logical. It doesn't have to be logical, but it will be felt. So people look for blame, and there will be intense guilt. I wish I had engaged the other physician instead of this one. I helped a lot of people during the COVID time, and most people would say, I wish I had called the ambulance earlier. I wish I had not kept them in the house, and things like that. So there will be anger, there will be guilt. And then this is this happens because we are still not ready to accept that this is what has happened. And then the third stage is the bargaining stage, which is like a false safe space from the pain. And it's like self-fooling. It's like giving yourself self-hope that what if I commit to God and say, I'll start tithing, or I'll start, I'll live for you. And so when I wake up, God, I hope they will be back. I hope it will look like I was in a bad dream and that they're back. And God, I'll do 1, 2, 3. But it's just a space where people go in to hide temporarily because the pain is just too much, and they're just trying to give themselves, or as human beings, we try to give ourselves false hope. And then from the bargaining stage, there's the depression stage, where after the what ifs and the bargaining, you realize that this person is not here anymore. Where you used to set the table for 5 people, it's now 4 people. And where maybe there are certain roles that you were not doing, now it's you who has to do those roles. And reality sets in, and then the pain becomes very intense, and there's withdrawal, there's depression, there's intense pain. Then because now you're processing and you're living out the reality of the loss of that person or that thing not being there. So that is the depression stage. And the last stage is the acceptance stage. And the acceptance stage is an experience that we have. It's a process that we experience, but it's not like a final stage with an end point that, oh, we've accepted and this is where we are at now. I've accepted that they're gone and it's done. It's a process, and it's a lifetime process, because we'll always have triggers. And when this happens, when one is depressed, it's very important not to numb the pain. Sometimes the pain is so intense, it's raw, it's acute, and the temptation is to run away. Some will look for, prescription drugs. Some will go to alcohol. Some will just numb the pain and act as if nothing happened. Or some will just work and work and work, and just try to numb the pain and run away from it. But it's healthy, it's important to allow ourselves to Not easy though, easier said than done. But we have to feel the feelings, we have to feel the pain, and that is how the healing will come. And then recently, there's been a sixth stage, which is called, that was introduced, which is called meaning or meaning making. Because after all this happens, there's this individual who's experienced loss, who has a new identity. So the becoming or the making sense of the self and the world of that person and living alongside the journey and what becomes of them is the meaning making stage.
Oh, thank you very much. I remember there was a time I met someone who had just lost their mom.
Mm.
It's a young man, and he came dressed in his mom's clothes. So when you were explaining the stage where maybe people eat what they used to eat, maybe drink what they used to drink as a way of healing, it actually I actually thought about that young man. Well, what prompted you to be a grief counselor? Is it like passion, or you lost a loved one who you struggle to let go, or you dealt with grief then when you found meaning, you realize you then decided to give back to humanity?
Thanks, Tafadwa. I've always been a helper, I would say. I've always been a helper from when I was in high school. I would have people come to me with their issues, and as I grew into a young lady, I would have adults confiding in me or seeking for advice concerning life. And some of the things were I couldn't deal with, because some of them could be marital issues and you're coming to a 21-year-old girl. So I would work with elderly women, pastors or community leaders whom I would go and talk to. No, I would maintain the confidentiality, but I would state the issues. They would help me. They would tell me what to say or the scriptures to use, and then I would go back and help the people. And if the people allowed me to refer them to someone whom I deemed more experienced to deal with the issue, then I would refer. So I'd say from a very young stage, from when I was in high school, I would help people with their issues, and over time, I also longed to understand, like, in which area of counseling I needed to specialize in. So I searched within myself, I looked around, but I couldn't really tell. So I just continued. And at some point, I think around 2019, that's when my work in grief was really pronounced, because my heart was broken. I lost beloved loved ones during COVID, and the world was mourning in isolation. And from a cultural perspective, particularly the Zimbabwean culture, when that happens, we gather, we comfort each other, we sing, we dance, we tease, we mimic, we laugh, we grieve together, we scream, we mourn together. So my heart was broken for the world, because I knew there were people who were mourning in isolation. And then I created platforms, particularly I used the Zoom platform, where people from all over the world would join in, express their pain, share their experiences, and, just seek support and healing. So that was when it was pronounced. But in the past as well, I would say I lost a lot of very close and significant family members, including my parents, when I was very young, when I was in my teens, and that hit very hard. It was very difficult. You and I have come a long way, and I'm sure you'd remember that. I'm not sure if I spent a whole year, but I remember in a certain season I spent months on end dressed in black from head to toe, because I'd lost two loved ones within like 4 months apart, who were like my mother figures, and that was very, very difficult for me. So yes, I have experienced loss in a very heavy way from a very young age, and that was very hard for me. And at some point, I lost a loved one when I was 13, 12 or 13. And while we were at the funeral, someone said they saw me crying, and one lady asked another, and they said, "Why is she crying?" And then the other one said, "Isn't we're at a funeral?" And so she's mourning, she's grieving. And that told me that sometimes children are seen but not understood, even in the context of grief and loss, because I wasn't expected to cry because I was a child, but I had a relationship, very close relationship with this person. So that has also motivated me, encouraged me to, you know, reach out to the world, to families, and, just to walk with them through the journey of grief, because it's not an easy one. And I remember someone saying to me, "Why would you do this kind of work? Because it's tough. What do you say to people?" But if no one does it, who will? If I don't do it, who will? No one will do it. So I would say it's been a part of me, and my eyes have been opened to, those who struggle emotionally and psychologically. And my area of specialization was then pronounced, or became pronounced, through the needs that were around me and that were in the world at that particular time.
You mentioned that when people saw you crying as a child, they asked why you were crying.
Mhm.
Many people have challenges like when your husband passes on and you're a young woman with young children, and sometimes getting the children to understand what has really happened is very difficult. How would you advise people to grieve along with their children? Because sometimes a mom can go through the grieving, and maybe the child is just told the day is going to heaven, but the child doesn't have an understanding of
Mm.
what heaven is and why would they deliver us and go to heaven anyway.
Mhm.
We're this young. What was we just spoke about the right ways to tell people earlier. What would be the right maybe approach of a young mother who has lost a husband, or a young father who has lost a wife and
Mhm.
is left with young children? How should they handle it so that they grieve together and probably at some stage find healing or acceptance of the situation?
Mhm. Thank you, Tafadzwa. That would be helpful, I know, to our listeners. I would say obviously it depends with the age of the child, but like you're saying that they are young, say they are 5, 6, 7, 8, those are the ones that are told that they've gone to heaven. So it's important to sit them down, because if they were part of the funeral process, for example, if there was a sickness, or maybe if it was a sudden death, whatever, or however, whatever the nature of loss came, it's important to sit the children down and tell them that this is what has happened, and in age appropriate language, and then going through with them, the process of the funeral, because they saw people coming, people gathered, dead in a box, or mom in a box, or whatever they will call it at that time, and take them through the whole process and use age appropriate language. And sometimes it would be good to use the language that they understand. Sometimes these children will understand maybe something told in a story form, or in a creative way, like drawing and coloring. And in the process, it's also important to use things like that to help them express how they feel. I remember one of my friends, when she lost her husband, um, the child kept hearing mom explaining to people how the death had happened. And then one day, when the child was just playing on the veranda, they took the cars and they just started pushing and, retelling mom's story and things like that. And then she just capitalized on that and broke it down for the child, because he's just retelling a story that is he's heard, said over and over again, but there's no understanding. So she capitalized on that and she broke it down for the child. So we don't have to lie to the children that dad or mom will come back, or telling them they've gone to heaven and leaving it there is not helpful either. So tell them to the point that they are not expecting to hear the intercom ring at 5:30 or at 6 or whatever time dad or mom used to return from work. So break it down all the way, that when we wake up, remind them that when we wake up, she won't be here. So Auntie Tafadzwa is here and she'll be helping us with this and that. And you guys will grow and will get on with life. Sometimes you'll see me cry, or sometimes when you feel like crying because you miss them and you're thinking about them, it's okay to do that. You can come to me and you can talk to me, or you can go to whoever they're close to or they feel comfortable to talk to within the family. So help them to express themselves. And I remember one lady, I'm sad to be saying this, it gets emotional, because I helped her a lot with the loss of her husband during the COVID period. And she would tell me that um, she wanted to be strong again for her sons, and that she didn't want her sons to see her cry. But I said, you know what? It's okay for you to cry. Not all the time though, but it's okay to see your children crying for their mom or their dad who's gone, because they'll understand. They'll also know how to grieve, how to process, and it's okay for them. They know that you love them. So it's okay for them to know that you miss them and that you cry, because it will also prepare them to deal with their loss and future losses. So I'd say break it down for them as much as possible and in every aspect that relates to their lives, so that they will understand and explain the process.
How would you explain that, like in a family setup, when a parent passes on, some children heal faster or move on, or maybe they accept faster than the others. Some seem maybe to be stuck. You hear someone, maybe their 60s and 70s, they're still talking about a sibling who passed on when they were 5 or 2,
Mm,
and some have moved on. And even like with in relationships, husband and wife, you find that with some men, within a year they're married. Some, they take long. With women also, some never get married, but with some, after a few months, if they find someone, they marry. I remember there was a discussion at some stage where people were arguing that like the partners, like if you lose your husband, how long would you want them to move on? So people were just saying, someone saying, you know what, me as no as soon as you're gone, I mean, like me, I'm free to look. So there was this impression that, like if someone looks for the next partner, whilst you're still like, maybe even just after the funeral or at the funeral, with some, they can even move on while the coffin is still in the house. I think people kind of feel that you don't care or you don't love. But how do you explain that? Because to tell the truth, you're gone. Like how all things being equal, you're supposed to release the other person to move on. But yeah, it's a bit.
Okay, I'll start from the sibling side. A family loses the parent, and some seem to heal earlier or faster than the others. But there are many things that come to play. For example, the attachment, the level of attachment that was between the child and that particular parent. There are things that happen in life. If you look at I hope I'll be able to remember to the point that I want to make, but I want to digress a bit. Um, I remember talking to someone, and I shared this on one of my, I think it was on Facebook, when I said that, there are people who have wounds from their parents, from the way their parents treated them when they were young. Particularly, I think our generation or the generation that's before ours, the parents were very tough. Those who would wake the kids up around 3:30 a.m., when the moon is still shining, and they will be sent to the fields and they will be whipped. And, some of those people have wounds and they don't believe that their parents loved them. So they may be grown, and because there were no platforms to express that pain and, to have those wounds addressed and healed, they will hold on to that resentment. And when that parent goes or when that parent dies, no issues. And then maybe there was the favorite one or the one that was deemed to be loved. That one will obviously struggle. So there could be underlying things or issues like that, which will obviously affect the attachment issue, like I said. And then life experiences, as siblings, people go through different things. And those different experiences and the personalities that we have will equip us differently for life and the experiences of life. So one will become more resilient while another may not be. And the nature of the loss, the personalities, like I said earlier on. So, and another person may be willing to deal with the loss, to face it, and process the pain, no matter how raw. And then another sibling may choose to just shut it out, and they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about the parent or their death. They don't want to see the pictures, visit the places they used to, whatever triggers them, whatever triggers the memories, they don't want. And they'll just live life as if, they're coping and they're doing well and they're healed when they haven't. So different factors come into play, but, we deal with things differently, though we may be siblings due to our life experiences, the level of attachment with the parent or the person who would have died. And then in terms of the spouses, um, and yes, it is a fact. The existential essence of it is, yes, if someone is gone, they're gone. But it also goes back to the issue of attachment as well. I remember one lady sharing with me that I think she remarried a year after her husband had died. And her mother-in-law was shocked because I think she had lost her husband maybe 20, 30 years earlier. And she was still grieving. And by the way, we grieve for the rest of our lives because we have triggers along the way that will remind us of our loved ones. And here and there, the waves of grief will come. But this lady's mother-in-law, they didn't understand how her daughter-in-law could have remarried, could have married her son just 1 year after she had lost her own husband. But she said to me, it's not because I was promiscuous or I am promiscuous or whatsoever. This is just how life has played out. I didn't plan it because the husband had passed on, I think it was a sudden death. So it just happened, and life happened that way. And they just followed through the course of life as it unfolded. So it doesn't have to, it's not something that someone would plan for, but life happens. And sometimes a person would say, I would never do that, you know, but some have been surprised by life and they've done it. So and for men sometimes it's because, and generally it's men would move on earlier generally. That's just generalization, because maybe because they don't have a broad social network like most women do, and maybe that marital tie is the one that brings the intimacy and the companionship that they need, where women will look at their children, and they most times they're able to look after the children because they have that nurturing spirit, and they have a way of doing it that maybe men are not really maybe gifted. But there are men who will also delay remarrying after losing a spouse because they, for different reasons, and one of the reasons being maybe they want to look after their kids on their own before they get on with another person. So I'd say women may have less pressure because they have a broader social support, where while men are different, and people do cope differently across the two genders. It could be a woman also who will quickly settle with another man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. At least, next time when we see people moving on quickly, we are not quick to judge, to also assume that maybe they already were in touch with the person they've moved on with because of the time frame. I was at the World Trade Center sometime, 9/11 Memorial Ground Zero. And I
Mm,
was told that one guy at the memorial came and jumped into the hall that they built for the memory of the people who lost their lives. And the reason why the guy jumped, he wanted to commit suicide.
mm,
Fortunately, he didn't pass on. They managed to rescue him and take him to the hospital, so I'm told. But he couldn't handle the memories of his father. So how does one deal with suicidal thoughts when they have lost their loved ones and they think it makes sense for them to also go, like life stops for them, they would rather also pass on. And how also should Christians grieve differently from non-Christians? And what is your advice from a biblical perspective?
mhm. Okay, in terms of suicide, when someone gets to that place, life would have ceased to have meaning, and they're like, what's the point of carrying on, of living on, because maybe that person was their world. And when a person does that, it's a cry for help. It's a sign that they're experiencing extreme pain, and wanting to commit suicide, tafadzwa, does not mean that someone wants to stop living. It's just a cry for help. It's just an expression and a sign that they are going through a very intense pain, and that they need help. So what I would encourage is to encourage them to talk. I love talking about, storytelling, because when we share our stories, we um, we release emotional pressure, we release emotional pain, we release our frustrations, we um, sort out our thoughts when we talk, just talking, just talking. in a safe space, in a space with supportive and compassionate people. So I would encourage whoever is who intends to support someone who's going through that, to encourage them to talk, encourage them to pick the person that they would feel comfortable, talking to, encourage them to go for therapy. But sometimes, people don't like these words, going for therapy, going for counseling, because it makes them feel like, they weak. However, it's perceived in certain circles of life. But it's to encourage them to speak and to encourage them to get to a place where they make peace with the loss, to acknowledge and to make peace with the loss. Because when we're helping people, sometimes people say, oh, you need to let go or you need to move on. It's not about that. It's about, encouraging them to live side by side with their loss, to help them see things differently and reaffirm that they can still move forward with the love and the pain, but living side by side with that loss, and that they don't have to, to take their life. So I believe that the greatest remedy, or one of the greatest remedies for emotional or psychological distress or things like that, is just talking, whether in therapy or in, with a family member or in a safe space.
Yes, I asked how should Christians grieve differently from non-Christians? And maybe you can also just give us your closing remarks after that. Then
Okay.
you tell us maybe if people want to get hold of you, where can they find you?
Okay. Thank you, Tafadzo. I would say, people have different belief systems. So sometimes you'd see, even in business, I know you and Mr. Mazibuko are in business, and there are principles that work, in business, whether one is Christian or they are not. But the difference would be there are people whose belief systems totally divorced from, what works for the Christian, and they would choose to follow through whatever rituals or things that they need to do or say in order to help themselves deal with grief. And on the other side, the Christian is looking to God, counting on God to heal them and to minister peace and comfort through the Holy Spirit, through the Word of God, through looking at the experiences of some people who've gone before them and have made it because they chose to trust God, through their painful moments. So I would say and there are people who would, though they are not Christian, would still seek counsel or seek comfort in the Christian space, and it would still work for them. So I would say, and can go with whatever prescriptions or whatever works in in their cultural settings or spiritual settings or religious settings. And if they feel that they can cross over to the other side, particularly from the non-Christian side, to be specific, to the Christian side, then yes, welcome to the Christian world. And through support and knowing how to appropriate and apply the word of God to their situations, they will receive healing. It may not be instant. It may take time, but the healing is guaranteed as long as they are willing to engage and to go through the process. And grief is it's a very messy and unpredictable process. So it's very important to be gracious and to be patient with yourself when you're going through with grief, or when you're helping someone who's grieved. And to know that it's a lifetime thing. As long as you live and as long as you love, you will live with the grief. But with time, obviously the intensity of the pain, it will wear off, but there'll always be triggers. And it's important to plan for the triggers, plan ahead for the anniversaries and the birthdays, meet up as families, do things together, and don't be isolated. If you can be with family, if you can be with someone, plan ahead for the triggers and look after yourselves, and know that the stages of grief are not linear. Today you can be like 3 years down the line, you can actually be feeling like, oh yeah, I've accepted this. And then the next day you are just in denial or you are angry. So it's not a linear process. You can be in stage 5 today and then in stage 3 the next week. And it's okay to feel how you feel. Just feel the feelings, express how you feel, and be gracious with yourself. Thank you so much, Tafadzwa, for this platform. I've been learning a lot, and thank you so much for creating this platform and for having me today. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, I have a new Facebook page. It's called Tete Memo. It's Pamumvuri the Shade. That's a Facebook page. My personal Facebook page is Memory Zisengwe Darikwa. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on WhatsApp. My number is +263 772 441 421. +263 772 441 421. Thank you, Tafadzwa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Memory. It was very insightful, and I hope our listeners have also found some answers and some healing with what you shared. We really appreciate you availing yourself this afternoon. Well, we encourage our listeners to also follow Dr. Memory's page, Tete Memo at Pamumvuri. I hope I got that correct. The Facebook page. Yes, we can also follow her page to learn more. And thank you very much, everyone who followed and who listened, and to everyone who's going to listen. Let's keep dreaming. Your dream is worth fighting for. If you would like to get hold of us with anything that has to do with well-being, productivity, and achievement of dreams, you can write us an email to Tafadzwa at tafadzwamazbukospeaks.co.za, or you can also visit our website on www.tafadzwamazbukospeaks.co.za, and also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube, The Dream That Was Worth Fighting For. You can also share this video if you think of someone who will benefit from it. Thank you very much. Let's keep dreaming. Have a great weekend. Cheers.